You making it about if a cop pulls you over, how you'll be treated differently than Dricus because of skin colour. How does that have anything remotely to do with the fact that Dricus lives in Africa, he's from Africa, and he's the first UFC champion to get a belt while training and living in Africa? He's the first residing African champion. No one is acknowledging this, including Israel Adesanya. He still has not acknowledged it. Alright, as you guys all know, Dricus du Plessis beat Israel Adesanya last weekend at UFC 305. Now, in the build-up to this fight, there was a lot of talk about, the King of Africa, the true real African. I've made countless videos over the past year, probably a year and a half now, on these two's beef and how, the lead up to this fight is a really dangerous line that they're kind of getting to. But anyway, regardless of that, other fighters like to talk a bit about the situation themselves, but it's gone a bit quiet from the community's front since Dricus has won. However, one man who is kind of involved in these talks is Kamaru Usman. Now, Kamaru Usman, as he would say, is one of the three kings, one of the three Nigerian champions, African champions. Obviously, I don't believe Francis Ngannou is Nigerian. And Kamaru Usman had a few very interesting things to say about Dricus's win. Obviously, Dricus claimed that he was the first African-born and first champion to be living in Africa when he won a UFC title, which is completely correct. No one I don't understand why these men can't give Dricus his credit and say, yes, he is the first champion who lives in Africa to win the belt, because that's completely valid, regardless of if he's African or not. Leon Edwards could go live in Africa and win the belt, then he's the first champion to win the belt living in Africa, so it's just one of these weird things that these men are frustrated about. And I think it's because they don't feel a true connection to their homeland. Obviously they have a connection to their roots and they are who they are. However, I still just think they don't feel truly connected or connected enough for some reason. So Henry Cejudo on him and Kamaru Usman's podcast made a light-hearted comment saying, well, I suppose now we can call Dricus the African king. And Kamaru said, but why? But why? Explain that to me. I hate how he talks, by the way. Explain that to me. Why? Why? It's just like, oh my god, you make me cringe, man. Fucking hell. Yeah, and Henry Cejudo kind of was like, fuck, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. He looked a little bit uncomfortable, then followed up by saying, well, that's what this whole thing was about. Who's the real king of Africa? And it was the battle to be the king of Africa. And then Kamaru, just really weird how he even mentioned this or tried to saying this. He said, if Dricus gets pulled over, he gets treated a different way. And it was like, what? And you can see Cejudo being like, right, okay. And then Kamaru was kind of like, he said something along the lines of, does his skin colour change the way he's treated? And then Cejudo weirdly was like, not in the US, but then Kamaru was like, well, that's bullshit. And I actually agree that is also bullshit. Obviously there is a lot of racism that happens every single day, but this is completely irrelevant to the facts. Usman is once again making this about skin colour, which is continuing this terrible, horrible narrative. And I think on a personal level, Dricus and Izzy don't get along, but because they have now fought, there has to be that mutual respect, regardless of what was said. So I thought this was all said and done, and it was all in the mud, and it wouldn't really be brought up anymore. But now Kamaru Usman's bringing it all up, which is just absolutely brilliant. Another guy bringing this up, and if Kamaru wants to go up to middleweight, that would be a huge fight, Kamaru versus Dricus. That would be unreal. But look, it's just, and he followed to say, Dricus, growing up in South Africa wouldn't have been treated differently by his skin colour, all this and that, despite the fact there was a lot of black versus white. It still is in South Africa. There's a lot of racial crime in South Africa. But Cejudo made a comment about how, nowadays, I think everyone's very accepting, and Kamaru was like, he's not a true African champion because, he doesn't get treated differently because of his skin colour. And I sat there, I said, no way did he just say that. Kamaru Usman claims you can't be a real African unless you are treated badly by it because of the colour of your skin. So if you're not black, and if you don't have that, if you're not treated differently for being black, and you don't struggle because you have dark skin, you're not a true African, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And it does show the maturity and he obviously feels so disconnected from Africa. He thinks you have to be treated badly in America because you're black to be African. Whereas I would argue a true African champion is someone who's grown up in Africa, regardless of your skin colour, and treats everyone with massive respect in Africa. Not someone who's grown up badly with, abuse because of their skin colour. Kamaru, you're still African. You just don't live in Africa. You haven't since you were a child. Your father was a criminal who went to prison for selling illegal pharmaceuticals and evading tax and being just a criminal, Hence why you have multiple steroid accusations and a lot of proof of why you would have steroid accusations. I mean, the spots on your back, the changing of your head shape when you came into the prime years in the UFC, your head shape changed, and we've seen it with guys even like Conor McGregor, his head shape's completely changed after he self-admittedly was on steroids to regrow his leg, so the bone density in his ankle. So I think your logic is completely just false. That's a stupid, I can't say that word, stupid, ignorant, I almost said it again, absolutely uneducated, and you're just, you don't like the fact that there's a white man claiming he's the African champion. That's all it is. You will never say it out loud, but you and Izzy, and fun fact for you, Francis Ngannou has not said anything on this topic. He does not care because he has a connection to his home roots. He's a true African. He represents Cameroon, so it is what it is. He had to stow away on a boat. You had daddy's money fly you over. That this is the difference in individuals, and the reason you think you have to be a real African is with growing up with racism in the USA that makes you a real African. It's because you have got no true connection to your African roots. Yeah, you've grown up in a house with Nigerians and you have Nigerian food, but you're an American, mate. You've got an American passport, an American citizenship, I don't want to dive too deep into it because I don't want to be slated myself. However, I've got a lot of strong opinions on this, and you saying, you making it about if a cop pulls you over, how you'll be treated differently than Dricus because of skin colour. How does that have anything remotely to do with the fact that Dricus lives in Africa, he's from Africa, and he's the first UFC champion to get a belt while training and living in Africa? He's the first residing African champion. No one is acknowledging this, including Israel Adesanya. He still has not acknowledged it. But whatever. He won, he continued to win. How about you fight Dricus Usman? It's another big fight, another toxic narrative going into it. How dare you? How dare you, old man? Also, why aren't you fighting? Do your knees hurt too much? Why are you not competing and fighting? You haven't fought in fucking months. February was the last time you fought, was it? Was it February? Maybe it was February. So, no, you've got your podcast with Cejudo, and as soon as Cejudo makes a good point saying, well, he's now the king of Africa, you say he's not a true African because of his skin colour and he wouldn't be treated differently in the United States because of his the logic does not even make sense. You're just coping really hard. Fuck you. Good luck with your next fight. See you later, folks. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and give me your thoughts on this situation. Goodbye.